Alright everyone, it's time for a video that some of you probably are going to really dislike, and that's okay, but you know, it has to actually be said, and that's that my serious run for the governor's race here in Vermont will not be able to take place, and I'll tell you why, and it relates to campaign finance law. I was like, whoops, yeah, there's a little bit of an oversight when I first saw this. What happened yesterday night is that a fan on Twitter told me, oh, you know, Patreon will delete your page if you're running for office, and I said, oh, that could be a problem. I contacted Patreon. I sent off an email questioning them. I said, I don't see anything about this on the terms of service. And they said, no, we don't care about that. You can fundraise on this platform as long as, you know, in the course of your campaign, you can't be like, you know, violent. You can't encourage violence and like, you know, harass people and stuff, the usual. So you can't mudsling too much. It would have to be a more polite campaign, I guess. But here's the problem, and this was the run-up, the second part of the email they sent me back. But they can't vouch for laws within the states for campaign finance purposes. And then I thought to myself for a moment, I should probably take a look at the Vermont campaign finance laws. And although I didn't see anything particularly, I started to get nervous, and here's why. As of right now, I haven't filed any paperwork to run. That is, technically I'm running for the governorship, but you'd have to write in my name, not on a ballot. I'm not going to be probably included in a poll, although, you know, if you generated enough meme-worthy attention, you probably could be regardless. Because it's not therefore technically a legal and official run, although I can technically win, and I think I could take office if I did win the popular vote regardless. Now, I'm not on a ballot. I don't have to conform to campaign law because I haven't actually signed a consent of candidate form. The second that I actually turn in a consent of candidate to get on the ballot, to get in the debates and stuff, when I get the signatures, sign that form with the financial disclosure and stuff, the state is going to look at my income, and they're going to see Patreon Inc. As, you know, one of my two employers, the other one being Amazon Inc., which is, you know, it's the most hilarious financial disclosure form of modern times. They're going to look at that and say, oh, Patreon, oh, that's a crowdfunding platform. Do any of your donations come from foreign sources? Because that might be a little bit of a problem. In a way, at the very least, even if it didn't legally prevent me from running in an official capacity, I mean, you can, you know, say that you're running all you want. Even if it didn't, it would be exploited if I started to rise up in the percentage of the vote so that I was actually threatening a mainstream candidate, threatening to take their job. They're going to say, oh, yeah, that opponent, you mean the one that gets like Russian money or something. Look, you know that the way that it works, look at the political situation right now, it could become a little bit of a problem. And I'll tell you this, the only way around this would be to sacrifice half of my income for an undetermined result while also having to foot the bill for an election lawyer to make sure that the fact that I took crowdfunding in the fiscal year isn't already going to negatively impact my ability to run because I happen to have some of that money potentially foreign in nature on hand. I think that I would be wading into a trap which could be easily exploited by my political enemies. Not necessarily the smartest thing to do when you're running an independent campaign. So the serious side of the campaign has to end. I'm not going to file paperwork. That is true. By the way, Holt's going to have a field day with that. He's going to say, oh, I told you so. Well, no, I would have filed it, absolutely. But unfortunately, you know, I take those Russian bucks, so, you know, you're going to have to deal with that. Here's the bright side, though. You can still write me in the state of Vermont. People all over the world that I, you know, talk to can still push the idea of doing so, and it can simply be transformed from maybe what would have been a mainstream campaign, like I'm fucking mainstream to begin with. Like, yes, look back through my YouTube videos, the way I dress and the way I speak, like that wouldn't become a campaign issue if I started wearing a suit and chopped my hair off. Some people were encouraging that too. The good thing is, though, in a state like Vermont with a fairly low population, cracking through to gain third place is very, very easy. Imagine what would happen if in the final result, the third place finisher was some YouTuber who happened to reside in the state who didn't even file off a consent of candidate form. So that had to be tabulated and put up on live TV during the midterms. That would be an enormous victory. Look, Rome is not built in a day. You'll remember, perhaps. Over the course of election after election, the Libertarian Party never cracked double digits in a single state, other than I think Johnson's first run with New Mexico, his home state. In the last election, because of political fury going on every possible side, managed to break through, 5% in every single state. Millions and millions of people voted for a third party that had been, up until that point, a complete afterthought and now has 50-state ballot access. I still believe, over the coming years, I am telling you the truth here. This is the truth. It will happen. Over the coming years, people who have large audiences and potentially independent sources of income will enter politics. Most of those people at this point are so young that they haven't even thought about running for office. There are a few Maverick-style campaigns. A very, very small number of older millennials are currently in office. Largely, it's the boomers and Gen X. As the millennials get a little bit older, the boomers begin, sorry to say this to a boomer, but to die off. People who have those audiences will be running. There's a reason why they want to purge large users who are outside of the establishment and sanitize these big tech platforms. Now, I don't think that it works. I think alt tech just ends up rising up, catering to that generation. That becomes the political bulwark. Why do you think I want to be on all these sites? But right now, as of right now, there's that complication. It's very, very funny, by the way, it's funny that I should have to worry about campaign finance law when Citizens United passes and someone can have a super PAC run $5 million worth of ads. They can take all the foreign money they want into their company, roll it into a slush fund, and it makes absolutely no difference. It's perfectly legal, just as long as they don't coordinate with the candidate themselves. They can swift boat all they want, essentially. But if somebody's got totally independent income and might have gotten a couple $1,000 from a Russian or something, that potentially becomes something you get sued by the Federal Elections Commission over. So yes, this candidacy goes on in an independent form. But I'm not going to sit there, I'm not going to go around and attend a bunch of rallies, so to speak. You can get together with people, certainly air your grievances. But there is something to be said, and this is the other thing that I thought of. Throughout time, people who are independent, who become almost like living memes, actually appear to do better. You think of maybe a Jello Biafra saying, oh, well, we should legalize squatting on abandoned properties when he ran for, I can't remember what he was running, he was the mayor of San Francisco or something years ago. And then he got like kicked by an anarcho-punk for being a sellout, but it was pretty funny. Or even like Stern. His candidacy was basically a joke. He had a joke platform. It wasn't serious. And yet he started crawling up there to the point where he ended up dropping out because he was afraid of winning. This can actually happen. And it's happened before. Gen X had, again, Biafra, Stern, a few of these others. Let's think of a Jesse Ventura or even an Arnold Schwarzenegger. People who aren't taken seriously suddenly either win or get very close or at the very least manage to inject political issues into the mainstream consciousness, sometimes for the first time. I think that can happen now, but it requires more than one person to say, hey, might run for an office. Even if it's a 1% of the vote joke campaign, it's still technically a campaign. Other people need to do this also, and there are people, some of you get like ad revenue or something, you're not taking crowdfunding. Crowdfunding might, oddly enough, be a weakness in the modern sense of campaigning. I don't know, I guess I'll have to write more books and get more of my income from literature so that in the future I can run for mayor or something. But yes, you can write in my name, again, in the description. It's on my book, so it's straightforward. But I can't, legally speaking, I don't think I can actually gather the signatures, file the official paperwork to be in, much as I would love to be in the debates. It would be the best time ever, because I like debating anyway. It'd be even better on a stage in front of people. Especially when somebody would be streaming it live on YouTube. There'd probably be 500,000 people watching that shit at that point. But I would love to do that, but I can't. Legally speaking, it's impossible. I could invite like Phil Scott and whoever the Democrat is over and say, okay, you get on the webcams and we'll stream this online. JF can moderate. A special guest appearance by Mr. Medicare and Lionel Nation. Imagine how that would be. But yeah, I'm going to run on the YouTube platform. The platform remains the same, by the way. Those are things I believe in. Absolutely. Phil Scott's gun control is moronic. Dragging his heels on ending, just the marijuana side of the drug war is moronic. Any attempt to raise taxes at this point is crazy. Forbes is breathing down our neck. Forbes, they're not like, you know, far right, alt right extremists. Oh no, you don't want to pay more for welfare programs. They're a totally establishment rag that won't even let you use ad blocker on their site. They're calling this state out as basically a high tax cold hellhole that no businesses can survive in, which is true. You know, it's not a hellhole. I mean, there are a lot of good things about this state, but we're not exactly open for business. This sort of thing, I think those of us with larger audiences, maybe we need to simply talk about these issues more and ram them into the establishment more and with greater fervor as a preface to running for office. That might lay the groundwork in a better manner. But I mean, I apologize to those that were so excited yesterday. You can still write me in, though. Absolutely. There are people who have had, I think, I can't remember which election it was. I think it was 2012. I can't remember. And one of the candidates for governor was like the marijuana party. The legalized pot party got several thousand votes. Okay, if someone can run on a single issue platform with no presence in the wider world whatsoever and say, hey, 420 blaze it's basically the only thing you're voting for here, and get several thousand people to vote for them, imagine a fleshed out platform on an independent campaign. Perfectly possible. At that point, my biggest weakness becomes a lot of people can't spell my name. In all honesty. But yeah, I'll still be talking about this. It's just I'm going to limit it largely to web only. And this is also, I'll say this, is another optimistic statement here. It is a little, I know, it bums me out a little too probably. As another optimistic thing though, this allows us to gauge perhaps the effectiveness of a large, an international audience on a more local scale. That is, that it doesn't necessarily translate. It's like if someone, let's say they're real famous within their state. Someone's really famous Vermonter. That doesn't necessarily transfer to national or international name recognition. And a person being well known on YouTube or some other tech platform where they've got a global audience, that doesn't necessarily translate to name recognition in their locality. And so there's a little bit of an interplay there. It'll be interesting to see what ends up happening. At this point, it would be hysterical just to be on, you know, the final results on election night. If that happens, I would blow a gasket. Oh, yeah, it'd be definitely time for hours of drunken celebration at that point. Call it the YouTube party or something. Just vote for YouTube for governor. Yeah, let them censor things. Instead of Phil Scott making the decision, that'd be funny. But yeah, and the other thing is, of course, there will be voters. I'm telling you this right now, as a Vermonter who's, you know, more aware of our political and social situation than most people, if you're not in Vermont or at least within northern New England, maybe the Adirondack region. Let me tell you, there are a huge number of people who voted for Phil Scott. I'm not the only one who will refuse to support him because of his stance on gun control. There are also people, the Democrats potentially, that didn't vote for Sue Minner and voted for him at the time because of her stance on gun control, but then got pissed off because he dragged his heels on marijuana. Now, some of that gets lessened over time because this summer it gets legalized. He basically held his nose in a closed ceremony and signed the bill. He made a huge mistake in doing that. He should have come out and rolled up a joint and smoked it as he was signing the bill. He should have been toking the pot at that time if he really wanted to endear himself to, you know, some tens of thousands of people who had already voted for him. It's like we're a weird state. We've got Democrats that oppose gun control and we've got Republicans who don't like the drug war. And Phil Scott has gone literally topsy-turvy on this. The Democrat will probably beat him. Ultimately, he will probably be supplanted. He'll be a single-term governor, which is like if he had stuck to his guns and just said, well, I'm going to be like that other, you know, goofball there that was half-bald that time that was a Republican governor. Can't remember his name because he was not memorable. He was a forgettable guy because he didn't do anything. And that's the sort of Republican governor that this state can stomach. Just like we can deal with an environmentalist Democrat, but a Sue Minter passing gun control, nah, it's not going to work. Phil Scott will probably lose. If I can contribute towards that by vampirizing even a few hundred votes, it'll be a fucking great day for me. Oh yeah, it's coming for Phil's job, so keep those spoons clanking. Yeah, keep the memes churning. It can have an impact. We saw what happened with Trump, didn't we? Ultimately, people thought that was nothing more than a joke. You look at what platform did he express? People said it was the most far-out thing they'd ever heard. Oh, building a wall at the border. Oh my goodness, that's like really, really weird and draconian. Well, no, not 20 years ago. You know, some of my views weren't considered odd 20 years ago, and then some of my views were considered strange then and aren't now. It's actually strange how we've moved as a society. Sometimes good, sometimes not for good reasons. That's about all. Peace out.